Hello, welcome to this video. This video is going to be called Led Zeppelin IV, An Appreciation. Of course, that album's not really called Led Zeppelin IV. You have it down here. This album's not called anything at all. Yes, it's not an original copy. I bought this probably in the 40 years ago, around about 1982. You can see there's nothing there, there's nothing there. There's nothing on the spine at all. We open it up, and there's that incredible and iconic hermit artwork right there. We open it up, we've got the track titles there. We have the lyrics to Stairway to Heaven there. We don't have the names of any of the musicians on there, but we do have these four symbols. So sometimes this album gets called Four Symbols, sometimes it gets called Untitled. Led Zeppelin at this point are the biggest band in the world, you know, and they've made one of the biggest selling albums of all time, and they can do that without putting their name on it or the names of the musicians on it. It's quite an incredible feat. I have just finished filming a video called The 10 Greatest Classic Rock Albums of All Time, and on that, at number one was this album. And when I was doing the video, you know, I've tried to say a little bit about each album. I get to this album, I thought, God, I've held this album up so many times in so many different contexts that it really does deserve its own video, I think. So this is what you're going to get. You're going to get me for 20 minutes approximately talking about this album. I haven't planned it. I haven't researched it. It is my personal thoughts on Led Zeppelin IV. And they will be very personal because I have a personal connection to this album, because for 2 or 3 years between 1999 and 2001 I actually drummed for Robert Plant, and I've had the honour of actually sat next to him, questioning him about this album. I've been told stuff by him that I don't think he's told anybody else, and I hope that I can sort of bring some of that into this video. Also, I've played with Robert Plant. I know his approach to music. I know, what his thoughts and feelings are, and I hopefully can bring some of that into this video. It's also one of my favourite albums of all time. I've owned it for 40 years. So this is going to be a very personal discussion about this album. I'm sure you want me to get on with it and stop babbling on. So shall we start? It was made in 1971. It is Led Zeppelin's fourth album. It's the last of the sort of four early albums that are all sort of called Led Zeppelin. You've got Led Zeppelin 1, Led Zeppelin 2, Led Zeppelin 3, Led Zeppelin 4. On Led Zeppelin 1, we have Led Zeppelin emerge, and they basically pull everything together that's going on in rock music at that time. Stuff that Hendrix has done, stuff that Cream has done, stuff that Jeff Beck has done. They pull it all together, brilliantly produced. Jimmy Page is a genius in the studio at that point, because he spent so much time in studios in the sort of London session scene. He's been studying how to record music. He has an idea of putting more air into the recording, of making the recording bigger. So Led Zeppelin 1 is one of the most incredible sounding rock albums from 68, 69. It's something that never gets mentioned. The second album is made while they're on tour. It's cobbled together all over the world in different studios. They still managed to make an absolute classic album, and because they're jamming together and they're able to integrate that sort of jamming approach into the band, Led Zeppelin 2 goes up another gear. It seems to go a little bit beyond Led Zeppelin 1. With Whole Lot of Love, they really start to define like almost heavy metal, with that track, really based upon the blues, but also drawing more and more on English folk influences, Delta blues influences, a whole bunch of things. The third album comes out, and this is where they get very experimental. I feel the first two albums are incredible, but a little bit derivative. They still haven't gone out and done their own thing. We can see traces of what they're doing in other groups, like the Jeff Beck group in Cream. We can see the traces there. We can see it in Vanilla Fudge. We can see it in a whole host of bands that are influencing them. They famously go off to Bron-y-Ar, which is a cottage in Wales. and they sort of forge a new sound, and they draw on what I call the English aesthetic. And what the English aesthetic is a name for a whole bunch of different things. The English aesthetic includes like Shakespeare, it includes romantic poetry, but it also includes like music hall, you know, like The Laughing Policeman includes Monty Python and The Goons, it includes Carry On films. It's a whole separate thing, and I think Led Zeppelin understand that they are an English rock band. A lot of the 1960s bands that had come through the British blues boom had to find their own way of doing it, and Led Zeppelin 3 is where Led Zeppelin find that, and they make a very English album with a lot of folk influences, but also on the album they produce tracks like Immigrant Song, which is even heavier than anything they've done before, and they produced Since I've Been Loving You, which I think is their first really successful take on the blues, where you don't feel like it's just a British blues band aping the blues with electric guitars. You feel like this is its own piece of music and occupies its own world, you know. Led Zeppelin 3 is one of my favourite Zepp albums. So at that point in 1971 they go to Headley Grange. Now Headley Grange is a manor house, and they've got a mobile recording, and they're living there. And I asked Robert about this period, and he said to me that obviously the thing that doesn't get mentioned, these guys are very young. It's 1971, you know, Robert's 23, Bonham's 23, Jimmy Page is 27, and John Paul Jones is 26. So can you imagine being young lads, sort of, you know, ensconced in some old creaky manor house in the middle of nowhere to make an album? And he said there was a lot of practical jokes, a lot of hijinks. He said he can remember John Bonham was trying to, you know, bring 2 bass drums in. Don't know if this is true, it's what Robert told me, and I'm pretty sure it was around about Led Zepp 4. And they didn't want him to play 2 bass drums, and he said they used to sort of, when he wasn't around, they'd sort of grab one of his bass drums and take it out into field and chuck it in a hedge, and then Bonham would get all annoyed and he'd go around stomping around the English countryside trying to find his bass drum. Trying to light fires, keep warm, and basically having just a load of fun, just experimenting. You know, these guys could not have been aware that they were going to make an album that was so classic that 50 years later we're still raking over every little bit trying to work out how they did it. That's something you have to bear in mind, that this is what makes music great. Music is, you play music, you don't work music, you play it. Music is play, and when it's at its height, it is people playing, experimenting, having fun, following their muse. You remember music, it's got the word music. You play music, you have to play with your muse. That's what it is, and that's what I hear when I put on this album. It opens up, of course, with Black Dog, and Black Dog is one of the greatest rock tracks of all time. It uses a device which I call ventilation, which is where you've got space in the track to let the vocal through. So many songs do this, you know. If you think of I don't know, Unbelievable by EMF, the first song that comes to mind, you get that incredible riff, down dang 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 bam, you're unbelievable, you know. Or bum bum, Mr. Blue Skies, dun, dun, please tell me why. This is a ventilated where the music stops to let the vocal in. It's an incredible device. It comes from the blues. It's based upon question and answer. The band can ask a question and the vocals can answer, or the other way round. In this case, with Black Dog, it's the other way round. And this album starts off incredible. Who would do this? You know, I've been in 100 bands and made 100 albums, and I've never thought, let's start the album with a vocal, just one vocal on its own. When you hear, "Hey mama, see the way you move," you hear that incredible line, all on its own, and then he stops. It's the biggest gap ever, and then Zeppelin kick in with a riff. Now, most rock riffs, if you're a guitarist, you can pick the guitar up. You know, if you're trying to learn Iron Man or Paranoid or A Whole Lot of Love, you can pick the guitar up and you can nail that riff in a few minutes if you've got your ears are reasonable. This isn't like that. This riff goes all over the place, and it takes the time and it moves it up and down. I think John Paul Jones came up with this riff, and of course John Paul Jones doesn't get the credit that he should. He too was a seasoned session musician who'd done so much work. He'd arranged Mellow Yellow for Donovan. You know, he's an arranger, a multi-instrumentalist. He knows his music theory, he understands his jazz, he understands his classical. And here we have that twisting riff that cleverly plays with sound. He puts you in a place where you don't know where you are. And John Bonham's a genius at this. John Bonham is a heavy drummer, but he's not a drummer that like slams out the one. John Bonham will play over the bar, he'll play inside the bar. You know, so we get ba 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 dagga bom. Is that the one? Ba dagga dagga bom da. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now he's coming in after the one with that downbeat. This is all like a mathematical jigsaw that no one's ever heard before in rock music. It's so sophisticated. You've got that incredible guitar sound from Jimmy Page, which I think is created by him basically plugging the guitar straight into the desk and overdriving the desk. So we've got all sorts of different guitar sounds, you know. Second up is rock and roll. Of course, that starts with that incredible introduction by John Bonham on drums, which of course is lifted straight from Chuck Berry's drummer, whose name escapes me at the moment. This is what happens when you get older. It will Earl Palmer. There, I just need a little bit. I just need a little bit of time. That comes from Earl Palmer, and Bonham does the same thing again. Anyone who's tried to play that, you start off with that, and then the band doesn't seem to come in the same place because of Bonham's not starting on the second track to do this, and then they lurch in to what is really a sort of Chuck Berry, Little Richard-esque rock and roll track called Rock and Roll, right? But I feel on this album that Led Zeppelin's influences they now completely understand. This is a rock and roll track, but it's a Led Zeppelin track. It's not an electric blues band doing a cover of a rock and roll. It doesn't sound like that. It sounds like Led Zeppelin, even though they're doing all the rock and roll changes, you know. So we have these two rockers. It's two of the greatest rock openers on any album. Then what do we get next? Battle of Evermore, which is now channeling stuff they've done on Led Zeppelin 3, mandolin, acoustic guitar, 2 vocals. One of them is Robert, and we have the great Sandy Denny from Fairport Convention weaving their way through this Tolkien-esque sort of epic track, almost like a progressive rock track in its breadth. Halfway through, it goes off on a beautifully arranged, you know, journey, and it's incredible when you hear that because it sounds so epic. I know Robert is he may be a little bit embarrassed of sort of, you know, channeling these Tolkien-esque lyrics. That's only because so many people did it, and then the progressive rockers got maligned for doing such things, and it's no longer seen by the critics as cool. But as we know, most music critics are idiots, and we ignore them. On this channel, we ignore the music critics, you know. So I feel that what is encapsulated on this track is the journey that they take, that Tolkien gets his characters taken in Lord of the Rings, and I can feel that journey, and it's spelt out in that beautiful middle section, which although is very small amount of instruments with a very small dynamic sort of volume range, sounds absolutely epic. Of course they close the track with Stairway to Heaven. It's hard to listen to Stairway to Heaven now. I can remember as a kid, never heard Stairway to Heaven before, and someone told me about it, and they said this is the greatest track of all time. And it was on the radio. It was on Paul Gambaccini. He did a show on Led Zeppelin. I'm pretty sure he closed the show with Led Zeppelin. So I can remember sitting down with my headphones, going, "Oh, this is that track that everyone says is the best track ever made. Let's have a listen then." And listening to it, and at the end, as it trails off, as side one began with just Robert's vocal, beautiful. As it just trails off with that, and she's by the stairway to heaven, I could feel my stomach just drop at what I'd heard. And this is where I'd been told this is the greatest track of all time. So really, I should have been let down by what, you know, how much expectation do you need? and yet it fulfilled all that. I think side 1 of Led Zepp 4 is one of the most perfect sides in rock history on every single level, on the songwriting, the production, the playing, the programming, how one track moves to the next. It delivers everything you want on side 1. When you turn over to side 2, they just seem to amp everything up. It's just more, right? The first, let's see what we've got here. Let's show you what we've got on the album. So there's a track listing for you of the album. So again, Misty Mountain Hop, and this is a really trippy track where they do that trick again. Down, 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 down. See, I'm not Rick Beato. I don't play the tracks. I sing them to you. I hope you appreciate this. You get my a cappella version of everything. I ain't got the technology to be doing all that stuff. Can't be arsed. It's too much effort. So I'm just going to sing it to you. Down, 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 blah, 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 boom, boom, boom. And when he hits it, you go, oh, what has happened? It's the same trick again. This is all over this album. Never gets discussed. It's called rhythmic displacement. It's a rhythmic illusion where you trick the audience to think you're in one place and then you're actually in something else. And here's the third example of it. You know, Robert's incredible overdub vocal that sort of just goes round in a circle. You never can. And it just makes you feel like you're in a certain place when you listen to that track. The next track is probably the most proggy moment on the album, 4 Sticks, which I believe John Bonham played with 2 sticks in this hand and 2 sticks in that hand, and he gets this sort of tribal African thing, which is in an odd time signature. Down, 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 down. That's in 5, isn't it? Right. Incredible. Going to California, where they channel Joni Mitchell. You know, I think this for me is, if I was going to say the weakest track on here, it would be Going to California. That's not bad because it's an absolute classic track, but I do feel it's very derivative of Joni Mitchell. You know, they've been listening to that West Coast folk thing, but again, that middle section when Robert's voice just soars up. No one's done that. So I take it all back. I'm trying to be objective. I'm trying to find something to criticise this album. No, I can't. I'm not going to criticise Going to California. And then it finishes with when the Levee Breaks. Blues rock. I said there's a problem with blues rock. There's a problem with English people playing blues rock. But here, you don't feel like that. You know, Led Zeppelin have taken the blues. Of course, it's an old Memphis Minnie track, is it? You know, they're singing about the levee in New Orleans. If it breaks, then it will flood the area. And this goes back to a flood that happened in the 1920s or 30s out in New Orleans. You know, what does a guy from West Bromwich in England know about this? But the way it's delivered and the way it's channeled and the genius of the blues to be able to affect music outside its culture like this. This is why the blues is good, because it can do that. For this song to be able to transmit through these guys and produce something else. And of course, what we have on here is John Bonham famously in the hallway of the Manor House, Headley Grange, with a couple of mics up above him, creating probably one of the most iconic drum sounds of all time. A drum sound that is going to go back to black culture and influence hip-hop, you know, and this beat has been sampled after The Funky Drummer by Clyde Stubblefield. It's got to be the second most sampled drum beat and drum sound. How many people have nicked this snare drum? So this is what we have with Led Zepp 4, an absolute masterpiece. They followed that up with House of the Holy, a fantastic album. Then they did Physical Graffiti, which many people feel is the greatest Led Zeppelin album of all time. I don't. I think it's Led Zepp 4. That's another video where I could explain. I think, you know, Led Zeppelin deserve a lot of videos on my channel. And I've been really enjoyed being able to get in depth and get into this band and being able to channel a little bit of my experience of playing with Robert, which was really an artist that really pulled as much as he could out of you through improvisation. He jams. This band jams. This is a band that finds a groove and they play it. This is what bands do. This is the technology of the band that everyone's forgetting. You know, there's bands now and they're making albums and they're all dialing it in. Everyone's at home recording their own little bit and make sure it's perfect, and then they're lining it up on a computer. That's not what a rock band is about. A rock band is where 4 people can get in a room, and the magic of that bass, guitar, drums, vocal means that they can improvise, and they can improvise through jazz and through blues, and they can come up with something that is just absolutely magical. That's what you're hearing on this album. We need to remember this and champion this, because in the next few years we might find that this art form dies with the people who did it. You know, the next generation are coming up, but are they learning to get in a room and play and write songs in that way? I don't know. Anyway, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you like, if you want to subscribe. If you want to support me, there's a link to my Patreon down below. I'm going to see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.